My name is Amanda, 38 years old, and a single mom to my amazing 15-year-old daughter, Hannah. My younger sister, Stephanie, and I have always been close, so when her wedding invitation arrived, we were both excited. But my excitement quickly turned to confusion when I noticed only my name on the invitation, not Hannah's. When I called Stephanie to ask about it, her response left me speechless. Sorry, Amanda. The wedding is adults only. No one under 18 allowed. I never imagined my own sister would exclude her niece. Before I continue my story, let me know where you are watching from and hit subscribe if you have ever been hurt by the people who should love you unconditionally. Stephanie and I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Denver. With a 5-year age gap between us, I naturally took on the role of protector and caretaker. Our parents both worked long hours at their respective jobs, my father as an accountant and mother as a nurse, which meant I often picked Stephanie up from elementary school while I was in middle school. I would help her with homework, make her afternoon snacks, and listen to her stories about school. I remember one particular incident when Stephanie was 9 and I was 14. Some girls at her school were bullying her because of her red hair and freckles. When I found out, I marched right over to those girls during recess and told them if they ever bothered my sister again, they would have to deal with me. The bullying stopped immediately. Stephanie looked at me like I was her personal superhero. As we grew older, our bond only strengthened. When Stephanie had her first date at 16, I was the one who helped her pick out her outfit, taught her how to apply mascara without clumping, and waited up until she got home safely. I was there for every milestone in her life, including her high school graduation, her college acceptance, and her first heartbreak. When I met David at 21, Stephanie was instantly supportive. She helped plan my bridal shower and served as my maid of honor in my wedding at 22. She held my hand through all my pregnancy scares and was the first person besides David to hold Hannah when she was born. The look of pure love on her face as she cradled her newborn niece is something I will never forget. Life took an unexpected turn when Hannah turned 5. David began working late, becoming distant, and making excuses to avoid family time. Eventually, I discovered he was having an affair with a coworker. The divorce was messy and painful. David left us with little financial support, moving across the country with his new girlfriend and barely maintaining contact with Hannah. Those first few years as a single mom were incredibly difficult. I worked 2 jobs to make ends meet. One as an administrative assistant during the day and waitressing on weekends. There were nights I would cry myself to sleep, wondering how I would pay the next bill or afford new shoes for Hannah's growing feet. During this challenging period, Stephanie became my rock. She would babysit Hannah on weekends so I could pick up extra shifts. She helped with groceries when money was tight and even paid our electric bill one winter when I had to choose between heat and rent. More importantly, she provided emotional support, reminding me that I was strong enough to get through this. Hannah and Stephanie developed a special bond during those years. Stephanie was the fun aunt who took Hannah to the park, bought her ice cream, and snuck her little presents just because. When Hannah was 7, Stephanie taught her how to bake chocolate chip cookies from scratch, creating a Saturday tradition that lasted for years. They would spend hours in the kitchen floor, covering their faces, giggling as they experimented with different ingredients. For Hannah's 10th birthday, Stephanie took her shopping for her first grown-up dress and afterward for a fancy lunch, where they ate with their pinkies up, pretending to be royalty. Hannah talked about that day for months, treasuring the photos they took in the mall photo booth. Things began to change about 2 years ago, when Stephanie met Richard at a charity gala for her law firm. Richard came from a wealthy family with connections throughout the city. He worked as an investment banker, lived in an exclusive neighborhood, and moved in social circles that were very different from our middle-class upbringing. As Stephanie and Richard's relationship progressed, her visits became less frequent. The Saturday baking sessions with Hannah stopped. At first, there were excuses about work being busy or Richard having planned something special. Eventually, the excuses stopped altogether, and the visits simply dwindled. I noticed subtle changes in my sister. Her wardrobe became more expensive, her hair always professionally styled. She began talking about restaurants I could never afford, and vacations to places I had only seen in magazines. While I was happy that she seemed happy, I worried about the growing distance between us. Hannah noticed the changes too. "Why does Aunt Stephanie not come over anymore?" she would ask. I made excuses about adult responsibilities and busy schedules, never wanting to taint Hannah's image of her beloved aunt. But I could see the hurt in my daughter's eyes when weeks would pass without a call or text from Stephanie. "I have invited a few extra guests," she announced as I was setting the table. "Hope that is not a problem." The wedding invitation arrived on a Tuesday in early June. I remember because Hannah had just finished her last day of ninth grade, and we were planning to celebrate with takeout and a movie marathon. The envelope stood out immediately in our pile of bills and flyers. Thick cream-colored paper with gold-embossed lettering and a wax seal bearing the initials S and R. "Is that from Aunt Stephanie?" Hannah asked, excitement lighting up her face as she recognized the elegant handwriting on the envelope. "Looks like it," I replied carefully, breaking the seal. Inside was the most elaborate wedding invitation I had ever seen. The paper felt expensive, between my fingers heavy and textured. Gold foil script announced that Stephanie Marie Johnson and Richard William Harrington III request the honor of your presence as they unite in matrimony. The wedding was to take place at the Grand Wellington Hotel, one of the most prestigious venues in the city, followed by a reception in their ballroom. "We are going right?" Hannah asked, peering over my shoulder at the invitation. "I need to start thinking about what to wear." I smiled at her enthusiasm. "Of course we are going. This is your aunt's big day." It wasn't until later that evening, after Hannah had gone to bed, that I noticed something was off about the invitation. At the bottom, in smaller print, it read Amanda Johnson and guest. There was no mention of Hannah. Despite the growing distance, I held on to hope that it was just a phase. Perhaps once Stephanie settled into her relationship with Richard, things would return to normal. After all, family bonds run deep, and the connection between us had weathered many storms before. When I called, Stephanie answered on the third ring, her voice distracted. "Amanda, I was just about to call you. Did you get the invitation? Did you get the invitation?" "Yes, we did. It's beautiful, Steph. Hannah is so excited about the wedding." There was a pause on the line. "About that, Amanda? Richard and I have decided to make the wedding adults only. No one under 18. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. "What do you mean Hannah is your niece, not some random child?" "I know, and I love her, but Richard's family is very traditional. They are contributing significantly to the wedding, and they expect a certain level of sophistication. Children can be unpredictable, and we want everything to be perfect." "Hannah is 15, not 5, I argued. "She knows how to behave at formal events. She won't be running around screaming or throwing food." Stephanie sighed. "It is not just about behavior. The venue is very upscale, and we are having an open bar. Plus, Richard's family does not believe events like this are appropriate for young people. It is an adult celebration." I could not believe what I was hearing. My sister was excluding her own niece from one of the most important days of her life because her fiancé's family did not think it was appropriate. "What if Hannah helped out somehow?" I suggested, desperately trying to find a compromise. "She could hand out programs or help guests sign the guest book. That way she could be part of the day without being a regular guest." "We have already hired professional staff for all of that," Stephanie replied, her voice growing cold. "Everything has been planned down to the last detail. We cannot make changes now." Suddenly, I heard Richard's voice in the background, followed by Stephanie covering the phone and whispering. When she returned, her tone had changed completely. "Look, Amanda, this is not up for negotiation. Richard and I have made our decision. The invitation is for you and a +1, meaning an adult guest, not Hannah. I hope you can respect our wishes for our special day." Before I could respond, Richard's voice came on the line. "Amanda, this is Richard. I understand you might be disappointed, but Stephanie and I have a vision for our wedding day. It is a sophisticated affair, and we have spent a significant amount of money to ensure everything is perfect. We cannot make exceptions even for family. I am sure you understand." The condescension in his voice made my blood boil, but I kept my composure. "I understand completely that this is your wedding. What I do not understand is how my 15-year-old niece does not qualify as family on a day that is supposed to be about celebrating family coming together." "Well," Richard said, clearly annoyed, "that is your perspective. Ours differs. The invitation stands as written. We hope to see you there." With that, he handed the phone back to Stephanie, who quickly said she had to go and ended the call. I sat there holding my phone, stunned at what had just happened. How was I going to tell Hannah that her aunt, whom she adored, did not want her at the wedding? How could I explain that she was being excluded because she was not considered sophisticated enough? The thought of the disappointment on her face made my heart ache. This was not just about missing a party. This was about being rejected by family, being told you are not good enough. It was a feeling I knew all too well from my own childhood, and I had always sworn Hannah would never experience that kind of pain. After the phone call with Stephanie and Richard, I sat at our kitchen table for nearly an hour, my emotions swirling like a tornado. Anger at my sister for allowing this to happen. Hurt that she would choose her new life over her family. Worry about how this would affect Hannah. And beneath it all, a deep sadness that the sister I had grown up with, the one who had stood by me through my darkest days, seemed to have disappeared. I considered my options carefully. I could attend the wedding alone, leaving Hannah behind, and pretend everything was fine. I could try to reason with Stephanie again, perhaps involving our parents to mediate. Or I could take a stand and refuse to attend a celebration that excluded my daughter. The next morning, Hannah bounded into the kitchen, her phone in hand. "Mom, Aunt Stephanie's wedding is going to be so fancy. I was looking at pictures of the hotel online. They have chandeliers that are like bigger than our living room." My heart sank. I had hoped to have more time to figure out how to break the news, but it was clear I needed to have this conversation now. "Honey, sit down for a minute. I need to talk to you about something." Hannah's smile faltered as she sat across from me at the table. "What is it? Is something wrong?" I took a deep breath. "I called Aunt Stephanie yesterday about the wedding invitation. There is something you need to know." I tried to explain the situation as gently as possible without vilifying Stephanie or Richard. I told her about the adults-only policy and how unfortunately that meant she would not be able to attend. Hannah's face fell, but she quickly tried to mask her disappointment. "Oh. Well, that is okay. I guess it is their wedding, so they get to decide." "Are you sure you are okay with this?" I asked, reaching across the table to take her hand. She nodded, but I could see her eyes beginning to water. "Yeah, totally fine. It is probably going to be boring anyway. All those fancy people talking about boring adult stuff." Then she looked up at me with a question that broke my heart. "Did Aunt Stephanie say why she does not want me there? Did I do something wrong?" "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "This has nothing to do with you. It is about Richard's family and their ideas about what a wedding should be like. Aunt Stephanie loves you very much." Hannah nodded again, but I could tell she did not believe me. "I already bought a dress," she said quietly. "The blue one we saw at the mall last month. I saved up my babysitting money and went back for it. I wanted to surprise you." I felt a surge of anger so intense it nearly took my breath away. My daughter had spent her own money on a dress to attend an event where she was not wanted. An event hosted by her own aunt who had once been like a second mother to her. "Can I be excused?" Hannah asked. "I have some homework to finish." It was summer break and I knew she had no homework, but I nodded anyway. She needed space to process her feelings, and I respected that. After Hannah went to her room, I called Stephanie again. This time she sent me to voicemail twice before finally answering on the third try. "Amanda, I am really busy with wedding plans. Can this wait?" "No, it cannot," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I wanted to let you know that Hannah and I will not be attending your wedding." There was a moment of silence on the other end. "What do you mean you are not coming? Is this because of the adults-only thing? I thought we settled that." "We did not settle anything. You and Richard made a decision that excludes my daughter, your niece, from a family celebration. That is not something I can support or participate in." Stephanie's voice rose in pitch. "So, you are punishing me because I will not break the rules for your daughter. This is exactly why we do not want children at the wedding. It always becomes a whole drama." "This is not about breaking rules, Stephanie. This is about recognizing who is family and who is not. Hannah is not just some random child. She is your niece, someone you used to bake cookies with every Saturday, someone who looks up to you and loves you. And you are telling her she is not welcome at one of the most important events in your life." "You are making this all about you as usual," Stephanie snapped. "This is my wedding day, mine and Richard's. We get to decide how we want it to be. If you cannot respect that, then maybe it is better you do not come." "I agree," I said calmly. "If my daughter is not welcome, then neither am I. I hope you have a beautiful wedding." I ended the call before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but I felt a strange sense of peace. I had made the right decision. The fallout was immediate. Within an hour, my phone was blowing up with messages from family members. My mother called, horrified that I was causing drama before the wedding. "Amanda, you need to be the bigger person here," she insisted. "It is just one day. Hannah will have plenty of other opportunities to attend family events." "That is not the point, Mom," I replied. "The point is that Hannah is being excluded from a family celebration for no reason other than Richard's family's arbitrary rules." My father was more direct. "Stop being so stubborn and think about your sister. Do you want to ruin her wedding because you cannot leave Hannah with a babysitter for one day?" Even extended family members weighed in. Aunt Carol texted to say I was being selfish. Cousin Jennifer suggested I was jealous of Stephanie's happiness. Through it all, I remained firm in my decision. This was not about me being stubborn or jealous. This was about teaching my daughter that she deserved respect, and that family should not be conditional. That night, as I passed by Hannah's room, I heard muffled crying. I gently knocked on her door. "Can I come in?" I asked. Hannah quickly wiped her eyes and nodded. I sat on the edge of her bed and pulled her into a hug. "I know this hurts," I said softly. "And it is okay to be sad and disappointed. I just do not understand why Aunt Stephanie does not want me there," she whispered. "We used to be so close." "People change," I said carefully. "Sometimes they get caught up in new relationships or lifestyles and forget what matters. But that does not mean you did anything wrong." Hannah looked up at me. "Are you really not going to the wedding because of me?" I brushed her hair back from her forehead. "I am not going because I believe we are a package deal. If someone cannot accept both of us, then they do not get either of us. That is what family means to me." Hannah hugged me tighter. "Thank you, Mom." As I held my daughter, I knew I had made the right choice. Sometimes standing up for what you believe in means making difficult decisions. But in this case, the decision was clear. My priority was protecting my daughter's heart and teaching her about self-respect and true family values. The wedding was still weeks away, and I knew the pressure from family would continue. But my mind was made up. Hannah and I would spend that day doing something special together, creating our own memories while Stephanie created hers without us. The day of Stephanie's wedding arrived with perfect weather. Bright blue skies, not a cloud in sight, and a gentle breeze. The kind of day brides dream about. As I looked out our kitchen window that morning, I felt a pang of sadness. Despite everything, part of me still wished I could be there to see my little sister walk down the aisle. "So, what are we doing today?" Hannah asked, joining me at the breakfast table. She was trying to sound casual, but I could tell she was making an effort to appear upbeat. "I was thinking we could have our own special day," I replied, pouring her a glass of orange juice. "How about we start with that new Marvel movie you have been wanting to see, then lunch at Cheesecake Factory, and afterward we could hit the mall? I think we both deserve some retail therapy." Hannah's face brightened. "Really, that sounds awesome." We spent the morning at the theater, losing ourselves in the action and adventure on screen. Hannah seemed genuinely happy, laughing at the funny parts and gripping my hand during the tense scenes. For a few hours, we both forgot about the wedding. After the movie, as we were enjoying our lunch, my phone started buzzing with texts. I tried to ignore it, but they kept coming. "Is that about the wedding?" Hannah asked, noticing my distraction. I nodded quickly, scanning the messages. They were from various family members and friends who were at the ceremony. "Your aunt looked beautiful," my cousin Brenda had written, attaching a photo of Stephanie in her wedding dress. "She did look stunning, radiant in an ivory gown that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Stephanie keeps looking for you." Another message read, "She seems sad. You are not here." And from my mother, "The ceremony was beautiful. Richard's family is very impressive. It is not too late to come to the reception." I put my phone away, determined not to let it ruin our day. "Just updates from the wedding," I told Hannah. "Nothing important." "You can tell me, Mom," Hannah said. "I am not a baby. I know today is hard for you too." Sometimes I forgot how perceptive my daughter was. "You are right," I admitted. "Today is difficult. But I am exactly where I want to be, with the person who matters most to me." Hannah smiled, and we continued our lunch, sharing a slice of cheesecake for dessert before heading to the mall. As promised, we indulged in some retail therapy buying, matching mother-daughter bracelets and a new pair of sneakers for Hannah. By the time we returned home that evening, my phone had accumulated dozens more messages and several missed calls. The wedding was over, and the fallout was beginning. My mother called as soon as we walked through the door. "Amanda, how could you do this to your sister? She was looking for you all day." Richard's family kept asking where her sister was, and she had to make excuses. "Mom, we have been through this," I sighed. "Stephanie made her choice, and I made mine." "You are being childish," my mother snapped. "This was the most important day of her life, and you ruined it because of your pride." "This wasn't about pride," I insisted. "This was about standing up for Hannah and showing her that family does not exclude family." The conversation ended with my mother hanging up on me, something she had never done before. Over the next few days, the division in our family became increasingly apparent. My father, always the peacekeeper, tried to stay neutral but clearly sided with Stephanie in his gentle suggestions that I should have been more understanding. My mother was openly angry, sending passive-aggressive texts about family loyalty and selfishness. Interestingly, not everyone was against us. My grandmother, usually quiet and non-confrontational, called to say she was proud of me. "That Richard has changed your sister," she said in her soft, wavering voice. "The Stephanie I know would never have excluded Hannah. You did the right thing, showing your daughter she comes first." A few cousins and friends also reached out with support, some confessing they thought the adults' only rule was ridiculous, especially when it came to immediate family. Meanwhile, Stephanie and Richard were enjoying a 2-week honeymoon in Italy. Her social media was filled with pictures of them drinking wine in Tuscany, riding gondolas in Venice, and posing in designer clothes against Mediterranean backdrops. There was no mention of the wedding drama or any acknowledgement that her sister and niece had been absent from her big day. Friends who attended the wedding told me it had been extravagant beyond belief. Ice sculptures, a 10-piece band, 5-course meal, and champagne that flowed like water. Richard's family, old money from the East Coast, had spared no expense in showcasing their wealth and status. "It was beautiful," my friend Lisa told me over coffee, "but honestly, it did not feel like Stephanie. It felt like a show for Richard's family and business associates. Half the guests were people I had never seen before, older couples in expensive clothes who barely smiled." Another friend mentioned that she had overheard Richard's mother commenting on Stephanie's family. "She called your parents quaint," she reported uncomfortably, and she seemed surprised that Stephanie had turned out so well coming from her background. These reports only confirmed what I had suspected. Stephanie was being absorbed into Richard's world, a world where image and status mattered more than genuine connections. A world where a 15-year-old niece could be excluded from a wedding because she did not fit the sophisticated image they wanted to project. As the weeks passed, the tension in our family remained. Sunday dinners at my parents' house, once a regular tradition, became awkward affairs. that I often found excuses to miss. My mother would mention Stephanie and Richard constantly updating everyone on their fabulous new life while giving me pointed looks. Hannah, for her part, seemed to bounce back from the hurt more quickly than I did. Teenagers have a remarkable resilience, and she was soon caught up in summer activities and friends. But occasionally, I would notice her scrolling through old photos of her and Stephanie on her phone, a wistful expression on her face. 2 months after the wedding, Stephanie and Richard moved into a new house in an exclusive neighborhood across town. I learned about it not from my sister but from my mother, who could not stop talking about the 5-bedroom, 6-bathroom mansion with a pool and home theater. They are having a housewarming party next month, my mother informed me during one of our increasingly rare phone conversations. Very exclusive. Only 50 people. But Stephanie said you are invited, of course. Will Hannah be welcome at this event? I asked already. Knowing the answer. My mother's hesitation told me everything I needed to know. Well, it is an evening cocktail party, very sophisticated. Not really appropriate for someone Hannah's age. Then please tell Stephanie thank you, but we will have to decline, I replied. And so the pattern was established. Life continued with a new normal. Stephanie in her wealthy bubble with Richard, me and Hannah, in our modest but happy home, and a growing chasm between the two worlds. Family gatherings became diplomatic negotiations with everyone walking on eggshells. As fall turned to winter and the holiday season approached, I wondered how we would navigate the traditional family Christmas celebration. Would this be the first year Hannah and I spent Christmas alone? Or would the spirit of the season finally bring some healing to our fractured family? The Johnson family Christmas had always been a big deal in our household. For as long as I could remember, the entire extended family gathered at my parents' house on Christmas Eve for a traditional dinner gift exchange and celebration that often lasted well into the night. My mother would spend weeks preparing, decorating every inch of the house with garlands, nutcrackers, and the family heirloom ornaments that had been passed down for generations. My father would string thousands of lights outside, determined each year to outdo the neighbors. And Hannah and I had always been in charge of the Christmas tree, carefully arranging ornaments and reminiscing about the stories behind each one. As December approached, I wondered if this year would be different. Would Stephanie and Richard even attend a family gathering that might not meet their new standards of sophistication? And if they did come, would Hannah once again be made to feel unwelcome? My questions were answered on the first Sunday of December when my mother called. Her voice was tentative, lacking the usual confidence when she announced, "Your father and I are planning Christmas Eve as usual this year. We really hope you and Hannah will come." "Will Stephanie and Richard be there?" I asked directly. "Yes," she admitted. "They have confirmed they will attend. And Amanda, I really need you to make an effort this time. It is Christmas, for goodness sake. Can we please put aside all this wedding business and just be a family again?" I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of family expectations pressing down on me. "Mom, I have no problem being civil to Stephanie and Richard. But I need to know that Hannah will be treated with respect. I will not put her through another rejection." "Of course she will be treated with respect," my mother insisted. "It is Christmas. Everyone is welcome at Christmas." "That is not what I asked," I pressed. "I need to know that Stephanie and Richard acknowledge they hurt Hannah and that they will make an effort to make amends." My mother sighed heavily. "Amanda, you are asking for too much. Stephanie does not feel she did anything wrong regarding the wedding. It was their special day and they had the right to plan it as they wished. And I have the right to protect my daughter," I countered. "No one is asking you not to protect Hannah," my mother said, frustration evident in her voice. "But carrying this grudge is not healthy for anyone, especially not Hannah. Do you want her to grow up thinking that family relationships can be discarded over one disagreement?" She had a point, though. I was reluctant to admit it. Was I using Hannah as an excuse to avoid dealing with my own hurt feelings about Stephanie's changes? Was I making things worse by keeping Hannah away from family gatherings? "I will think about it," I finally said. "But I need to talk to Hannah first. This has to be her decision, too." After hanging up, I found Hannah in her room, textbooks spread across her bed as she worked on a science project. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, sitting on the edge of her bed. "Can we talk for a minute?" She looked up from her work. "Sure, what is up?" "Grandma called about Christmas Eve. They are doing the usual family gathering at their house. Aunt Stephanie and Richard will be there." Hannah's expression was unreadable. "Oh, are we going?" "That is what I wanted to talk to you about. I think this should be your decision. If you are not comfortable going, we can start our own Christmas tradition this year. Maybe go skiing for the weekend or take a trip to visit Aunt Judy in California." Hannah was quiet for a moment, considering the options. Will Aunt Stephanie even want me there after the whole wedding thing? "Grandma says everyone is welcome," I replied carefully. "But I understand if you are hesitant." "I do not want to cause drama," Hannah said, picking at a loose thread on her comforter. "But I also do not want to miss Christmas with Grandma and Grandpa. And I miss Aunt Stephanie even if she has been weird lately." My heart ached at her words. Despite everything, Hannah still loved her aunt and wanted that relationship back. "What if we go but have a backup plan?" I suggested. "If things get uncomfortable, we can leave early and catch a late movie or something." Hannah nodded slowly. "Okay, I think I want to go. But can we practice what to say if Richard is mean again?" "Absolutely," I agreed. "We will come up with some polite but firm responses. And remember, we are a team. If at any point you want to leave, just give me the signal and we are out of there." Over the next few weeks, as Christmas approached, I found myself increasingly anxious about the upcoming family gathering. My father called twice to remind me to keep the peace and think of the family. My mother sent detailed texts about the menu, seating arrangements, and gift exchange, as if focusing on logistics could somehow erase the underlying tension. Meanwhile, I was formulating a plan of my own. If we were going to attend this Christmas celebration, I wanted it to be meaningful. I wanted to make a statement not with confrontation or anger, but with something more powerful. Something that might finally break through the wall Stephanie had built around herself. I spent evenings after Hannah went to bed working on a special project, gathering materials and memories from years past. It was therapeutic in a way, revisiting happier times and remembering the sister Stephanie used to be. As Christmas Eve approached, Hannah and I went shopping for gifts for the family. For my parents, we chose a digital photo frame preloaded with family photos. For various aunts, uncles, and cousins, we selected thoughtful but simple presents. But for Stephanie and Richard, I had something different in mind. "What do you get for people who can buy themselves anything they want?" Hannah wondered as we browsed through a department store. "Sometimes the most valuable gifts are not things that can be bought," I replied. "Sometimes they are reminders of what truly matters." The night before Christmas Eve, as we wrapped presents, Hannah asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Mom, do you think Aunt Stephanie is happy? With Richard and her new life, I mean." I paused, considering how to answer honestly without disparaging my sister. "I think Stephanie is living the life she thinks she wants right now. Sometimes people get caught up in appearances and forget to check if they are actually happy with what is underneath. Like when I wanted those expensive jeans because all the popular girls had them, but then I never wore them because they were uncomfortable," Hannah suggested. I smiled at her insight. "Exactly like that. Sometimes we think we want something because of how it looks from the outside, not realizing it might not feel right when we actually have it." Hannah nodded thoughtfully. "I hope she figures it out. I miss the old Aunt Stephanie." "Me too, honey," I said softly. "Me too." That night I finished wrapping Stephanie and Richard's gift, tying it with a beautiful red ribbon. It wasn't expensive or impressive by their standards. It wouldn't match their luxurious lifestyle or fit into their sophisticated image, but it contained something more valuable than anything money could buy: truth and memories. As I placed it under our small Christmas tree, I wondered how it would be received. Would Stephanie see it as the olive branch it was intended to be? Or would she dismiss it as sentimental nonsense that had no place in her new life? Either way, I was ready to face Christmas Eve with my head held high and my daughter by my side. Whatever happened, we would face it together, with dignity and grace. And maybe, just maybe, a Christmas miracle would bring back the sister I had lost. Christmas Eve arrived with a light dusting of snow, just enough to make everything look magical, without causing driving hazards. Hannah and I spent the morning baking cookies to bring to dinner following my grandmother's recipe for gingerbread that had been a family tradition for generations. "Do I look okay?" Hannah asked nervously as we prepared to leave. She was wearing a green velvet dress with a delicate gold necklace I had given her for her last birthday. "You look beautiful," I assured her, adjusting a strand of her hair. "Remember, hold your head high. You have nothing to be ashamed of." We arrived at my parents' house at exactly 6 p.m., arms laden with gifts and cookies. The house looked like something out of a Christmas movie, with twinkling lights outlining every window and door and a large wreath adorning the front entrance. My mother greeted us with forced cheerfulness. "Amanda, Hannah, Merry Christmas, come in, come in. Everyone is already here." My stomach tightened at those words. Everyone included Stephanie and Richard. As we entered the living room, I immediately spotted them by the fireplace. Stephanie in a designer red dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, Richard in a tailored suit that seemed excessive for a family gathering. They were chatting with my father and Richard's parents, who had apparently been invited this year. Hannah gripped my hand tighter as we approached the group. I squeezed back reassuringly. "Merry Christmas," I said to everyone, keeping my voice pleasant and neutral. Richard's parents nodded stiffly, clearly sizing us up and finding us lacking. My father gave us each a warm hug. Richard offered a curt Merry Christmas without quite making eye contact. Stephanie hesitated for a moment before stepping forward to hug me briefly. "Glad you could make it," she said, her voice not quite matching her words. Then she turned to Hannah with an awkward smile. "Hey Hannah, you have grown since I last saw you." "Hey Aunt Stephanie," Hannah replied politely. "Merry Christmas." An uncomfortable silence fell over the group until my mother announced dinner was ready. We moved to the dining room where the table had been extended to accommodate all 15 guests. I noticed immediately that Hannah and I had been seated at the opposite end of the table from Stephanie and Richard, with Richard's parents given the places of honor near my parents. The message was clear: the new social hierarchy in our family had Stephanie and her in-laws at the top, with Hannah and me at the bottom. Dinner was a tense affair, with conversation flowing awkwardly around sensitive topics. My mother fawned over Richard's mother, complimenting everything from her jewelry to her charity work. My father talked business with Richard, and his father nodding impressed at every mention of million-dollar deals and exclusive golf clubs. Halfway through the meal, Richard cleared his throat and raised his glass. "I would like to propose a toast," he announced, his voice carrying that unmistakable tone of someone accustomed to being listened to new family traditions and exciting news. Everyone raised their glasses expectantly. "Stephanie and I are pleased to announce that we have been accepted as members at the Hillcrest Country Club," he declared proudly. "And more importantly, we have just put a deposit down on a vacation home in Aspen. We hope to host many family gatherings there in the future." Murmurs of congratulations circulated around the table. My mother looked ecstatic, already imagining herself telling her friends about her daughter's vacation home. "Of course," Richard added, glancing briefly in my direction, "the Aspen house will mainly be for adult gatherings. The neighborhood and our social circle there are not really suitable for children." I felt Hannah stiffen beside me. Once again, she was being preemptively excluded. I placed my hand over hers under the table, silently communicating my support. "How wonderful," my mother gushed, either missing or ignoring the slight. "Stephanie always loved skiing as a child." Actually, Stephanie interjected, looking uncomfortable for the first time that evening. "I was thinking we could host Easter there next year. For everyone." She glanced at Hannah briefly before looking away. "We will see," Richard replied dismissively. "Depends on our schedule and the renovations." The conversation moved on to Richard's recent business success and his parents' upcoming cruise. Hannah remained quiet throughout the meal, pushing food around her plate more than eating it. I could see she was trying hard to maintain her composure in a situation where she clearly felt unwelcome. After dinner, we moved back to the living room for the gift exchange. This was always my favorite part of Christmas Eve when I was growing up. Everyone would sit in a circle and we would take turns opening presents, each gift met with genuine excitement and gratitude, no matter how small or inexpensive. Tonight, however, the gift exchange felt more like a competition. Richard's parents presented Stephanie and Richard with a small envelope that, based on Stephanie's reaction, contained something extremely valuable. Richard gave Stephanie a diamond bracelet that elicited gasps from my mother. My parents gave them a crystal vase that my mother repeatedly mentioned was from that exclusive shop downtown. When it came time for Hannah and me to open our gifts, they were nice but clearly less expensive. Richard's parents had given us each a generic scarf with the price tag still attached, showing they had spent exactly $50 each, probably the minimum they considered acceptable. Stephanie and Richard's gift to us was a gift card to a department store, again nice but impersonal. Throughout it all, Hannah maintained her grace, thanking everyone sincerely for their gifts, even those who had clearly put little thought into them. Finally, it was time for our gifts to be opened. My parents were genuinely touched by the digital photo frame, especially when they saw we had loaded it with family photos going back decades. Then it was Stephanie and Richard's turn to open our gift. I handed Stephanie the carefully wrapped package, our eyes meeting briefly as she took it. "It is not much," I said quietly, "but I hope it means something to you." Stephanie unwrapped the gift, slowly revealing a handcrafted photo album bound in soft leather. The cover read "Family Memories" in simple gold lettering. "Open it," I encouraged as she looked at me questioningly. As Stephanie opened the album, her expression changed from polite interest to surprise. The first page contained a photo of her as a newborn with me at 5 years old, holding her carefully in my arms, looking down at her with pure adoration. The next pages chronicled our childhood together. Stephanie's first steps with me holding her hands. The two of us in matching Easter dresses. Me helping her ride a bike without training wheels. Us building sandcastles at the beach. Then came the photos of Stephanie with Hannah as a baby. Stephanie cradling her newborn niece in the hospital. Stephanie feeding Hannah a bottle while making silly faces at her. The two of them baking cookies, flour covering their faces. Hannah's first day of school with Stephanie kneeling beside her, straightening her backpack. Interspersed among the photos were handmade cards and drawings that Hannah had given to her aunt over the years. Birthday cards with wobbly handwriting. Mother's Day cards that Hannah had made for Stephanie because you are like a second mom to me. A drawing of the three of us holding hands with my family, written across the top in a child's script. As Stephanie turned the pages, her hands began to tremble slightly. Richard looked increasingly uncomfortable, shifting in his seat and checking his watch. His parents exchanged disapproving glances, clearly finding the emotional display distasteful. The final page of the album held the wedding invitation that had started everything, mounted carefully in the center. Underneath it, in simple handwriting, I had written, "Family means no one gets left behind or forgotten." The room had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching Stephanie, waiting for her reaction. She stared at the last page for what seemed like an eternity, her finger tracing the words I had written. When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes. "Amanda the first," she began, but her voice caught. Richard cleared his throat loudly. "Well, that is certainly sentimental," he said, his tone, making it clear he did not consider that a compliment. "Stephanie, perhaps we should get going soon. We have that brunch tomorrow with the Hendersons." But Stephanie wasn't listening to him. She was looking at Hannah now, who was watching her aunt with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "Hannah," Stephanie said softly, "do you want to come see the rest of the pictures? There are some here I had forgotten about." Hannah hesitated, looking at me for guidance. I nodded encouragingly, and she moved to sit beside her aunt on the couch. As they looked through the album together, Stephanie began sharing stories about the photos. "This was the time we tried to make a cake for your mom's birthday and ended up with batter all over the kitchen, remember? And this was your first ballet recital. You were so nervous, but you did perfectly." Hannah smiled, genuine happiness lighting up her face for the first time that evening. "I remember. You brought me those pink roses afterward and told me I was the best dancer there, even though I totally messed up the spin part." For a moment, it was like the old Stephanie had returned. The one who valued family above all else. The one who saw Hannah as a precious part of her life, not an inconvenience to be excluded. Richard watched this interaction with growing impatience. "Stephanie," he said sharply, "it is getting late." Stephanie looked up at him, and I saw something in her expression I hadn't seen before. Resistance. "Just a few more minutes, Richard. I haven't seen these photos in years." Richard's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. His parents, however, made a show of checking their watches and gathering their coats, clearly disapproving of the turn the evening had taken. As the night wound down, Stephanie pulled me aside. "Can we talk privately?" We stepped into my father's study, closing the door behind us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "The album," Stephanie finally said. "It is beautiful, thank you." "You are welcome," I replied. "I wanted to remind you of who we used to be, who we still can be." Stephanie's eyes filled with tears again. "I know I have been different since meeting Richard. His world is so demanding. There are expectations I never had to deal with before." "But at what cost, Steph?" I asked gently. "You excluded your own niece from your wedding. A niece you used to love like your own daughter. Is fitting into Richard's world worth losing who you really are?" She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "Richard's family is very traditional. They have certain ideas about how things should be done. And Richard, he can be difficult when he does not get his way." I felt a chill at her words. "Stephanie, are you happy? Truly happy?" She didn't answer immediately, which was an answer in itself. "I have everything I thought I wanted," she finally said. "The beautiful house, the successful husband, the social status. But when I saw those pictures tonight..." Her voice trailed off. "It is not too late," I told her. "Hannah still loves you. She misses her aunt, the one who used to bake cookies with her and take her shopping and tell her she could be anything she wanted to be." Stephanie wiped away a tear. "I have made such a mess of things. I do not know how to fix it." "Start by being the Stephanie in those photos again," I suggested. "The one who knew that family means everyone, not just the convenient or socially acceptable parts." She nodded slowly. "I will try. I promise I will try." As we rejoined the others, I noticed Richard watching us suspiciously. He knew something had shifted, though he couldn't quite identify what it was. When it was time to leave, Stephanie hugged Hannah tightly. "I have missed you," she whispered loud enough that I could hear. "Can we have lunch next week, just the two of us, like we used to?" Hannah's face lit up. "Really, I would love that." Richard frowned but said nothing. His parents had already left, citing the late hour and the long drive back to their hotel. As Hannah and I drove home that night, the car was filled with a sense of cautious hope. "Do you think Aunt Stephanie meant it?" Hannah asked. "About lunch and everything." "I think she did," I replied. The album reminded her of who she used to be. Sometimes people just need a gentle nudge to find their way back to themselves. "That was a pretty awesome Christmas present," Mom Hannah said, smiling. "Way better than a gift card." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. Sometimes the best gifts are the ones that remind us of what really matters. That night, as I tucked Hannah into bed, something I rarely did now that she was 15, she looked up at me with serious eyes. "Thank you for standing up for me, Mom. With the wedding and everything. I know it was hard for you to say no to Aunt Stephanie." I kissed her forehead. "You will always come first for me, Hannah. Always. That is what being a parent means." As I closed her door, I reflected on the evening. My small change to our usual Christmas gifts, the simple act of reminding Stephanie of our shared history and the bonds that had once been unbreakable, had created a crack in the wall she had built around herself. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, not yet. But it was a start. And sometimes that is all you need. A beginning. A chance to rebuild what has been broken. A reminder of what truly matters in life. The days following Christmas brought a flurry of unexpected developments. The morning after our family gathering, I received a text from Stephanie that simply read, "Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? Just us." We met at a small cafe halfway between our homes' neutral territory for what I suspected would be a difficult conversation. Stephanie arrived looking different than she had at Christmas. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect makeup. Instead, she wore jeans, a simple sweater, and minimal makeup. She looked more like the sister I remembered. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as she slid into the booth across from me. "I have been doing a lot of thinking since Christmas Eve." "The album really affected you, didn't it?" I asked. She nodded, turning her coffee cup in her hands. It wasn't just the photos, though they were powerful. It was seeing Hannah's face when I suggested lunch. The pure joy at the thought of spending time with me again. I realized how much I have been missing, how much I have thrown away trying to fit into Richard's world. "It is not too late to fix things," I said cautiously. "That is what I want to talk to you about," Stephanie replied. "After we left your parents' house, Richard and I had a huge fight. He was furious about the album, said it was emotional manipulation. He called it low class to bring up the past that way. I felt a surge of anger. There is nothing low class about family memories. "I know that now," Stephanie said quietly. "But for months, I have been letting Richard dictate what is appropriate, what is sophisticated, who I should spend time with. I have been so afraid of disappointing him or embarrassing him in front of his family that I lost sight of who I really am." "What happened after the fight?" I asked. "I spent the night in our guest room," she admitted. "This morning I told Richard I was going to have lunch with Hannah next week, with or without his approval. I told him I would not cut my family out of my life anymore, especially not Hannah." "How did he take it?" "Not well," she said with a humorless laugh. "He said I needed to decide what was more important, my new life with him, or my old life with my unsophisticated family." "And what did you say?" I held my breath, not sure I wanted to hear the answer. "I told him I should never have had to choose in the first place. A man who truly loved me would not ask me to cut out people who have been there for me my entire life." She took a deep breath. "I told him I needed time to think about our relationship. I am staying at a hotel for a few days." I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "That took courage, Steph." "It should not have taken courage to stand up for my family," she said, tears filling her eyes. "That is what makes me realize how far I have strayed from who I really am. The Stephanie in those photos would never have excluded Hannah from her wedding. She would never have let anyone make her choose between the people she loves. People make mistakes," I said gently, "especially when they are trying to fit into a new world. The important thing is that you are recognizing it now." "I owe Hannah an apology," Stephanie said firmly. "A real one, not just a casual lunch invitation. And I owe you one too. You were right to stand up to me about the wedding. I was wrong, and I am so sorry I put you in that position." We talked for over 2 hours that day, really talked in a way we hadn't since before Stephanie met Richard. She confessed that she had been unhappy for months, feeling increasingly isolated from her old friends and family, constantly walking on eggshells around Richard and his parents, never quite measuring up to their expectations despite her best efforts. "The irony," she said, "is that I thought marrying Richard would give me security and status. Instead, I have never felt more insecure or less like myself." The following week, true to her word, Stephanie took Hannah to lunch. They went to their old favorite spot, a casual diner where they had spent countless Saturdays before Stephanie met Richard. When Hannah came home, she was beaming. Aunt Stephanie said she made a huge mistake about the wedding, Hannah told me excitedly. She apologized like a million times and said she should have stood up to Richard. "And guess what? She is taking me shopping next weekend just like we used to do." Over the next few months, I watched as Stephanie gradually reclaimed pieces of her old self. She and Richard entered counseling, trying to find a way forward that respected both their relationship and Stephanie's family ties. It wasn't always smooth. Richard resisted at first, accusing Stephanie of regressing, of embarrassing him in front of his family by suddenly insisting on including Hannah in events. But Stephanie stood firm. For the first time since meeting Richard, she established boundaries and stuck to them. "Hannah is my niece, my family," she told him. She will be included in our lives. That is non-negotiable. To everyone's surprise, Richard eventually began to adapt. Perhaps he realized how close he had come to losing Stephanie. Perhaps the counseling helped him see beyond his rigid upbringing. Whatever the reason, he made efforts to get to know Hannah, even inviting her to help design a recreation room in their new house for when you visit. By spring, the family dynamics had shifted significantly. Sunday dinners resumed, now alternating between my parents' house and Stephanie and Richard's. Hannah was always included, always welcomed. Richard's parents remained stiff and formal, but they no longer openly excluded Hannah or made pointed comments about children at adult events. At Easter, Stephanie and Richard did indeed host the family at their Aspen house, as Stephanie had suggested at Christmas. Hannah was given her own room decorated specifically for her, with photos of her and Stephanie on the dresser. It was a clear message this space was hers. She belonged here. One evening during that Easter weekend, as Hannah and Richard's father were engaged in an unexpected but lively chess match, Stephanie and I stepped onto the balcony to admire the mountain view. "Thank you," she said, wrapping her arms around herself against the chill. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For showing me what I was about to lose." She turned to look at me. That album was the wake-up call I needed. It showed me who I used to be, and who I was becoming. I did not like the comparison. "That is what family does," I replied. "Holds up a mirror when we need it most." "I almost lost everything that really matters," Stephanie said quietly, "trying to gain things that don't." As we stood there watching the sun set behind the mountains, I reflected on everything that had happened since that wedding invitation arrived last June. The hurt, the anger, the broken relationships, and now the healing. I had made a difficult choice to stand up for what I believed was right, to show my daughter that she deserved respect and inclusion, especially from family. It had been painful and lonely at times, but standing firm in that conviction had ultimately led to something better than mere reconciliation. It had led to growth and understanding for all of us. Stephanie had learned that true happiness comes not from social status or material possessions, but from authentic connections with the people who love you for who you really are. Hannah had learned that sometimes standing up for yourself means facing rejection and disappointment, but that self-respect is worth the temporary pain. And I had learned that sometimes the most powerful way to change a situation is not through angry confrontation, but through a gentle reminder of what truly matters. As we rejoined the others inside, I watched Hannah laugh at something Richard said, saw the genuine smile on Stephanie's face as she observed them getting along, and felt a sense of peace settle over me. Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most beautiful outcomes. Sometimes standing your ground is the greatest gift you can give, not just to yourself, but to everyone involved. And sometimes a simple photo album can bridge the gap between who we have become and who we truly are. In the end, family is not about perfect harmony or always agreeing. It is about loving each other through the disagreements, standing up for what is right, even when it is difficult, and finding your way back to each other when you have lost your way. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect someone you love? How did you handle family conflicts that seemed impossible to resolve? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the smallest actions can create the biggest changes in the hearts of those we love.